Hey, what's happening everyone? Jinsula here with a brand new Pokemon GO video. I hope your day is going really well, and let's jump right into it. Okay, so for today's video, I'm going to be giving you a raid guide for both Origin Form Dialga and Origin Form Palkia. Both of these Pokemon are in 5-star raids as of right now, and it's going to be going until the end of this week. And I do think that for both of them, they are extremely valuable and you need to raid them while you still can. And I totally recognize that this video is coming a little bit late, considering that both of these Pokemon are in 5-star raid battles as of yesterday, but if you're looking to get the best counters for either of these raid bosses, then hopefully this video will be able to help you out. I also wanted to talk about why both of these Pokemon are incredibly important when it comes to your account. You definitely need to get yourself a high IV of Dialga and Palkia, and then you also need to look for one with either Roar of Time or Spatial Ren. So yeah, without further ado, let's talk about how you can defeat both of these raid bosses, and then I'm gonna share my thoughts regarding both of them at the end of this video. Let's start off with Origin Form Dialga. Much like its regular form, it's going to have a type combination of Steel and Dragon, which means it's going to have only 2 weaknesses, which is going to be Ground type and Fighting type raid damage. It also has a plethora of different resistances that you will want to avoid bringing. This includes Grass, Poison, Bug, Electric, Flying, Normal, Psychic, Rock, Steel, and Water. If you bring any Pokemon with these moves, they're going to be very ineffective against Dialga, so do not bring any Pokemon with these moves. Now, if you're looking for a perfect IV Origin Form Dialga, you will want one that is 2337, and if it's weather boosted, it's going to be 2921. And Dialga Origin Form is going to be weather boosted by the same weather boosts for its regular form. This includes snowy weather and windy weather. Unfortunately, both of these weather types are incredibly rare no matter where you live, so maybe if you're lucky enough to see either of these weather types, then you should for sure go out and raid as many Dialga Origin Forms as you possibly can. Now, Dialga Origin Form is a little bit more difficult compared to other raid bosses. You're probably going to need about 6 other trainers that are at least level 30 in order to secure the win. And if you want to challenge yourself, you can do it with just 2 other trainers. Just make sure you and those other trainers are at least level 40, with all of your best counters being level 40 as well. Speaking of which, let's go over the Pokemon that are going to be the most effective against this raid boss. These include Mega Lucario, that's probably going to be the absolute best counter, and a great alternative is going to be Primal Groudon. And you will also want to consider bringing Shadow Exeggutor. That is a Pokemon that is not too difficult to get, and then Shadow Groudon is also going to be a really strong option. And then Terrakion with Fighting type moves is also going to be a good pick. Just be aware that Dialga does come with certain moves that are going to be strong against Terrakion. Now, if you do not have any of these Pokemon, you could also consider bringing just regular Lucario. That is a very powerful Pokemon up against Dialga, and then of course, Exeggutor is another strong option. Origin Form Dialga is pretty straightforward. As long as you have a bunch of high damage dealing ground types or fighting types, you're gonna be good to go. I really do think that Mega Lucario is the secret weapon because it does also resist a lot of Dialga's moves. That's something you should not ignore. But on top of that, it's one of the highest DPS dealing Pokemon currently in the game. So if you have yourself a Mega Lucario, you definitely need to bring it up against this raid boss. So next up, let's talk about Origin Form Palkia, because this Pokemon is also incredibly straightforward when it comes to its counters, but it's going to be a little bit trickier compared to Origin Form Dialga. Right, so Origin Form Palkia is going to be a duo Water and Dragon type Pokemon, and this means it's only going to be weak against other Dragon types along with Fairy types. It's also going to be resistant against Fire, Water, and Steel type attacks, so avoid bringing any Pokemon with these attacks. Now, for perfect IVs, you will want one that is 2367, and if it's weather boosted, it's going to be 2958. And it's going to be weather boosted by 2 weather types, which includes windy weather and rainy weather. Now, if you want to secure the win against Palkia Origin Form, you will want to bring at least 6 other trainers that are at least level 30, and if you want to challenge yourself, you could do it with just 2 other trainers. Just make sure all of them are level 40 and their Pokemon are also level 40. Now in terms of the best counters, it's going to be pretty straightforward. Mega Rayquaza is going to be your absolute best option, and then that's followed by Mega Garchomp, but alternatively you could also go with Mega Gardevoir if Palkia Origin Form is bringing some hard-hitting Dragon type attacks. Now another really good option is of course Origin Form Dialga, and the reason for that is because Origin Form Dialga does have a plethora of different resistances, so it's going to be really strong against any of Palkia's moveset. And another high DPS option is of course going to be Shadow Garchomp. Now, some budget options that you should consider bringing if you do not have any of these best counters include regular Garchomp, Haxorus with Dragon type attacks, as well as Gardevoir with Fairy type attacks. It's a very straightforward fight. As long as you bring really good Dragon types or really good Fairy types, you're going to be good to go. Alright, so why should you raid for both Origin Form Dialga and Origin Form Palkia? Why are these Pokemon so important? Well, first and foremost, they have Adventure Effect moves, which you could possibly get when you catch them. Yeah, possibly get. I think that's a bit unfortunate, because as of right now, you can't use an Elite Charge TM to get either Roar of Time or Spatial Rend on either of these Pokemon. And I think that's going to cause a lot of frustration for certain players because they might come across a 100% IV of either of these Pokemon, but they won't be able to get their special move. And I hope this is something that Niantic will change in the future, because when it comes to either of these Pokemon, the Adventure Effect move is what makes them so powerful. Like, I'm just specifically talking about battles, because when it comes to Origin Form Dialga, for example, it could be considered a top tier raid attacker when it comes to Dragon type raid damage, so long as it has Roar of Time. And the same can be said for Palkia with Spatial Rend. If you are lucky enough to get yourself a high IV of either of these Pokemon with any of those adventure moves, then you will want to power it up because it's going to be incredibly powerful from a battle point of view. But aside from that, the adventure effects themselves are also incredibly useful, specifically with Origin Form Dialga with Roar of Time. That move will actually extend the duration of a bunch of premium items, such as the Daily Adventure Incense. So if you're using the Daily Adventure Incense every single day and you're hoping to get yourself shiny Galarian legendary birds, for example, then you will want to use Roar of Time on top of it so that you could extend the duration of your Daily Adventure Incense and get a lot more value out of that item. And of course, the same can be applied for Stardust and Incense, as well as Lucky Eggs. Like, if you're using these premium items, you could use Roar of Time to extend the duration of those items, and that's going to be key for special events like this upcoming Wild Area event. So I do think Roar of Time is incredibly useful for that reason. Now, let's talk about Palkia with Spatial Rend. Why is that move actually useful? Well, what it does is that it extends the radius for where you can see Pokemon on your screen, and on paper that may not seem as useful compared to Roar of Time, but I actually think this move can be very useful, especially on big events like Community Days, Spotlight Hours, as well as special events like Wild Area. If you're stationary, you're only going to see a few number of Pokemon on screen at a time, but if you use Spatial Rend, that screen is going to be filled with a whole bunch of Pokemon, and you won't need to move as much in order to catch a bunch of those Pokemon. Like, for example, if you're doing a whole bunch of shiny checks during a Community Day, it's going to be a lot more useful to have more Pokemon on screen. And then for special events like the Wild Area event, where mighty Pokemon are actually going to be the thing you will want to catch, it's going to be incredibly useful to see a whole bunch more Pokemon on screen so you do not miss out on those mighty Pokemon. This is one of the many benefits of this Spatial Rend ability. So in other words, for Origin Form Dialga and Origin Form Palkia, you will want to get as many of these as possible, considering that you will want to get their Adventure Effect moves along with high IVs. And if you're lucky enough, maybe you'll get both. I mean, the dream has to be a Shundo Origin Form Dialga with Roar of Time or a Shundo Palkia with Spatial Rend. That's definitely going to make you the envy of pretty much every single Pokemon Go player. But yeah, with that said, that's going to be it for this video. Let me know your thoughts regarding either of these Pokemon down below. Is there a particular one out of these two that you're going to be going after during this week? Or are you going to be going for both of them? Or are you going to be skipping out on both of them? Definitely share your reasons why, and let's have a great discussion. Thank you so much for making it all the way to the end of this video. I hope you found it to be informative. My name is Count Jinsula. Be safe, have fun, love yourself, and I'll catch you in the next one.